Summertime is heating up in the sports world, getting ready for training camp with the Lions. Pistons wrapping up the draft, NHL draft wrapping up as well. But the big story right now in all of Detroit, and maybe all of baseball, are these Detroit Tigers. Welcome to DSP, and thank you for joining us. Along with Derek Hutchinson, I'm Hobie Artigue. And D, looking at this team right now, back to being number one in Major League Baseball, back to being at the top of the American League. To this point, I know we were talking earlier this year about how special this season could be. How special is it right now from your vantage point?
Yeah, they were kind of just treading water for a few weeks, right? Like they were winning 2 out of 3. They lost the series to the Nats, but then to go into Cleveland and not only sweep Cleveland, but kind of put the nail in their coffin, it felt like, at least in terms of the division race. That just got you right back to like that, the highest of highs that we've been all season.
And looking at what they were able to do on Sunday, because game one in Cleveland, it was really close. Game two was even closer than that. I mean, it was pretty close for the entire game on Sunday. It was 0-0 for pretty much the entire game. And then they got to the 9th inning and just came alive. I mean, that just shows you that this team can win in a variety of ways, because against the Nationals, they came out, scored a bunch of runs in that first game, and then it kind of fell off after that. But then to respond the way they did against a division rival, it's pretty special.
I think everybody kind of felt like it was 0-0 in the 8th, you know, and you're like, man, they kind of wasted this another vintage Scooble start. And then Cleveland scores, and you're like, oh, it's going to be a 1-0 final. To steal that one, especially scoring on a wild pitch and then just clubbing them in the 10th inning. I mean, that just, you could feel the life get sucked out of that stadium. And to the Tigers, it just proves, like, these guys are just never out of it. And the fact that it was Trey Sweeney, the guy who was just down in the minors, coming up and hitting the big 3-run homer, the first home run of his career off a fastball, it's just like, what else do you expect from these Tigers, man? It's just like somebody different every day.
It's just another like bullet point on what this season has been, because looking back, I mean, we were looking at Tarek Scooble's stats. You looked at the A's game whenever he gave up 4 earned runs, one of his worst performances of the year, and the offense picked him up for that game. And then so many times lately, he's been setting the tone for the offense whenever they can barely score runs, but then they came alive like they did on Sunday. Looking at the division right now, though, an AL pennant that's still a long ways away. But when you look at the division right now, this team is, let me be factually correct before making a statement, right now heading into the All-Star break, 6 games before the All-Star break, they are 13.5 games ahead of the Minnesota Twins.
You want to hear something
Usually
crazy?
It's Cleveland that's been right behind them, but now there's been a complete reversal in the division.
This is the craziest way to look at it. The Twins are closer to the White Sox than they are to the Tigers. That's how big of a lead the Tigers have in the division right now. I mean, you think of the White Sox, you think of like they just set the record for the worst season in history last year, and they're still really bad. And the Twins are closer to that, and the Twins are in second place. So, you know, nobody wants to say it's over in the first half of a baseball season, but you look at this and you think of, it's not just how good the Tigers have been, it's how mid these other 3 contenders have been. And it's like, do you really see any of these teams in their current states ripping off like 8-10 game winning streaks at the same time as the Tigers hit a big funk? It's very difficult to see. I'm stopping short of saying
I will say this because we did see it last year with the Tigers going the tear that they did last year when at the All-Star break, people were counting them out. Let's move on to 2025. And then they were able to put together that postseason run that they did.
I'm stopping short of saying it's like hard over, but I've stopped even really checking like Royals, Twins, and Cleveland scores. You know, like those almost feel irrelevant unless the Tigers really open the door with a long losing.
And I will say this for this Tigers team, because Minnesota opened the door for them last season. I don't see a way for this team to go in a free fall. And I know it's baseball. Anything can happen in any major sport. But with the way this team is set up, that A.J. Hinch has set it up, barring drastic injuries, I don't see this team going into a free fall, because like you alluded to earlier with Trey Sweeney coming in and hitting the home run yesterday to provide that spark for that team in that win over Cleveland, they just have so many guys that can step up and fill a void if somebody does go out.
I completely agree. This team is built in a way that almost feels like long slump proof, because they don't do anything so well that it's not sustainable, right? They pitch fairly well. The bullpen is pretty solid. The offense gets the job done. They run the bases very well. But there's nothing that if you took it away, the team would be in big trouble, you know?
Yeah.
They can go in a little bit of an offensive funk for a week and still go 3-4 or 4-3 because the starting pitching is so good. Or, like you said, Tarik Skubal can have an off day where he gives up a couple of 2-run homers, and by the fourth inning, the Tigers are already back in the lead.
Yeah.
So, you know, the organizational depth and the well-roundedness of this team sort of makes it so that you just don't see a really long losing streak coming into play. And when you're 14 games up almost in the division, that's what it's going to take to even open the door for somebody else.
And AJ Hinch has done a really, really good job this season. I know he sounds like a broken record almost every week, but he goes, we just come to the ballpark and play baseball. And I think that mindset has really rubbed off on the entire team, because they said the same things last year, but this year, with having been through what they did over the last year and a half prior to last season. I mean, they went through some dark times.
For sure.
And I think that they go back on that. So I don't see this team, even though they have built up such a sizable lead, to kind of rest and say, all right, we're good. Because also they're going to be getting tested before the All-Star break too, with Tampa Bay and Seattle coming to Comerica Park. Those teams are no slouches by any means.
Yeah, two super fun series, because these are the kinds of teams that the Tigers could see in a playoff series.
Yeah.
You know, if the Tigers were the third division winner, these could be first-round matchups. So, yeah, really, really fun week ahead with good teams coming to Comerica
And it really
Park.
shows you where you are before going into a nice break that this team has earned.
Yeah, and the Rays just took 2 of 3 from the Tigers the last week,
Yeah.
so you know it's a chance to get back in that series. And they beat the the Mariners 2 out of 3 earlier this season. So yeah, a couple of teams where if tiebreakers did come into play later this season, these head-to-head games do matter. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's the important series coming up for the Tigers. But another important note to get to, of course, the All-Star game that's coming up next week. We'll dive into that. The Tigers have 4 All-Stars. 3 are starters. Will there be a 4th on the mound?
There should be.
There should be. But
will there be?
Will there be is the question. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Last year, the Tigers had an All-Star in Tarik Skubal. They also had a Cy Young winner last year in Tarik Skubal. And guess what? Tarik Skubal is going back to the All-Star game, but he is not the only Tiger heading back. There are 3 others going with him. Riley Green going for a 2nd straight year. Javi Baez making his return. 3rd trip and 3rd at a different position as he goes to the outfield for this one. And then at second base, Gleyber Torres also making another appearance, his first year as a Tiger. When you take into account all of the different factors with this, just when's the last time that you remember seeing a team get represented this well at the All-Star game?
Yeah, it was those 2011 to 2014 like stud Tigers teams where you could make an argument for basically every single player in that lineup and starting rotation. Like the mental image in my head is like that picture with Verlander, Scherzer, Miggy, like all those guys standing in the outfield in their American League jerseys. And it just feels good to be represented as the best team in the league. The Tigers should be represented, and they are. With a 1/3 of the starting lineup is going to be Detroit Tigers. Javi Baez, who we were talking about, does he make the team, is now starting in
the All-Star
in a
game.
different position in the All-Star game. Like, that's unbelievable. So I feel like the Tigers are fairly represented. Are there a couple other individuals who maybe had arguments to get on the team? Yes, but you look at the rosters, and every team needs a rep, and it depends on positional needs. So it's hard to make a lot of arguments, and I feel like the Tigers are fairly represented.
Riley Green has had a phenomenal stretch right now. And looking at him specifically, because Javi Baez is a great story, Gleyber Torres a great story too, after a down year with the Yankees last season. But looking at Riley Green, what he's been able to build on. A couple of days ago, he was at 21 home runs. He's already now at 22. When he had reached that, it was mid-September last season. That shows just how much growth he has had this year. Is he kind of the next big name, do you think, for the Tigers organization?
He's getting there.
With all the big names that they do have on this roster, young names.
He's a budding superstar, it's difficult to see him in that light. He's like a very quiet, reserved guy, and he just kind of goes about his business. But like, if you look at the numbers over the last 2 seasons, he has the argument. He was a 5-win player last year. That's reserved for like the best of the best players. It's not Aaron Judge, but it's it's a very good guy. And Riley Green, like you said, over this last month, he's gone from he's probably an all-star to like it was Aaron Judge and then Riley Green and then who's third was the conversation. So he's absolutely separated himself as the best position player on the best team in the league. And because of that, I think that he's, one of the faces of the game.
At this point in time, he's having a special year. He's one of those homegrown talented players. At what point do you think the Tigers start to consider keeping him around long term?
Hopefully they're already thinking about that. As we've seen with Tarek Skubal, the closer a player gets to free agency, the more leverage they have, right?
And the higher they rise in Major League Baseball.
Like, I don't know, it takes two to tango, as Scott Harris has said. The player has to want to lock himself up long term. But if Riley Green is open to any sort of extension, there's absolutely no reason the Tigers shouldn't be looking long term with this guy. He's still young. He's good defensively as well as a good hitter. So it's a guy that, would you like to keep him around for like a 10-year deal? I think you'd happily pay that price. Yeah.
And that's also the big question on the pitching mound too with Tarek Skubal. I mean, the price continues to go up, it seems, with a guy that's putting together another Cy Young caliber season going back to the All-Star game. The question is with Tarek Skubal, he did not start the All-Star game last year. Second half of the year is really when he burst onto the scene, you could say. Do you think he should be the starter? Because we were looking at some of the stats of the other guys, and so many guys are kind of like all over the place. They're top 5. But Skubal probably is the best baseline out of all those starters that made the roster this year.
If you actually watch baseball, there is no doubt in your mind who should be starting this All-Star game. It's Tarek Skubal. He's the best pitcher. Like, we can confidently say he is the best pitcher on the planet, and especially in the American League. Look, like you said, there's 5 or 6 guys who all are very deserving of consideration. And we're a little worried that seeing as Aaron Boone is the manager of the AL, that he'll go with his guy, Max Fried. But if you watch Max Fried starts and you watch Tarek Skubal starts, there's zero comparison in the dominance. And Tarek Skubal has been the best pitcher in the world for 2 years running. And Bruce Bochy looked like a fool for not starting him last year. And, I'm a little worried that we're going to get the same thing. Does it really matter? No, honestly, it'll probably just make him mad and he'll be even better in the second half. But I do want for Tarek Skubal and for the Tigers to have, that starting pitcher on the mound.
And you were saying, what's the most important stat for you?
I mean, I'm a big whip guy. I get all of the talk about like ERA and, wins. And I do care about strikeouts.
And he's second in strikeouts.
To me, whip is something that over a long period of time, it shows dominance. And the fact that his whip is so much better than everybody else's in the league is like, it's not just that he's stranding run. He's not allowing base runners. He just straight up is not allowing base runners. So like you said, he's 1 or 2 in almost every meaningful category. And it's just clear to me that he's the best pitcher in the game.
If we're going off a baseline and different averages of where a certain pitcher is, like, are you first in this one? Are you fifth in this one? Skubal is like hovering at 2 for everything, and that is so hard to do.
Yeah,
especially so hard to do.
He won the Triple Crown last year. Like he's been doing it for 2 years straight, going on 2 years straight this season. It's just so difficult to be at the top of your game every 5th day, and he just always is. And he deserves to be recognized for that.
And he probably will be. Hopefully, we shall.
Yeah.
But like you said, does it really matter if you start or not?
Matter. Yeah, he's probably.
But for a guy who, like, as we were talking about, leads so many different statistical categories in baseball, maybe if you're looking for an edge or you need some bulletin board material, maybe this is something he doesn't have to dig too deep for.
Yeah, if the Tigers were playing the Yankees like the first series out of the All-Star break, I bet you Aaron Boone would start Tarek Skubal in the All-Star game so that he's not pitching angry against the Yankees.
I'm sure he would remember that if they reach an ALCS or ALDS against New York, though.
We'll talk about it.
Well, a long ways to go until then. Still much more to come on DSP. The Pistons free agency definitely took a turn for this team, but they still were able to add some key additions in the offseason. We'll dive into that on DSP. Welcome to DSP, and we are talking Pistons right now. Richard,
I'm back.
Is here. You're back. You're back,
baby.
The Pistons had to go a crazy route in free agency with, of course, the news that came out with Malik Beasley. You do not look concerned whatsoever, though.
He's putting on a brave face.
Let's say not concerned. I'm going to be cautiously optimistic because if you just think back last summer, when you look at the Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley, those signings, they didn't really you didn't go, oh my God, this is great or whatever, and then look how the season turned out. So unfortunately, with the situation that Malik Beasley is dealing with right now, you may have lost your opportunity with him. But you get Karis LeVert, you get Duncan Robinson, two guys that have played deep in the playoffs, and they're not chopped liver. And I think a lot of people have to stop. They have to say, those guys are not chopped liver. The guys can still play, and they're veterans as well. And I always talk about we got to have vets. So you're still bringing in two veterans. Hopefully we can get something, backup point guard, and I'm still searching for that stretch four.
I think people look at what happened with Duncan Robinson in the playoffs, and it's like, well, Miami didn't really want to play him. Something must be wrong. But guess what? Didn't Dallas do that with Tim Hardaway Jr. the year before?
Tim Hardaway
and how did that turn out?
He was
a starter.
He was a starter here for most of the year, and he played pretty dang on good. You know what I mean? So I think what Duncan does, he's still that shooter that can come off a screen and knock down that open three-pointer. He's still a guy that can knock down a three, and the Pistons need that. Karis is different, is that he can knock down the three, but he also can attack the basket, and he can be another ball handler. So with those two guys, you still got some good pieces to plug away with Cade. The key here is going to be internal development. A lot of people talk about Jaden Ivey, but you also need to see more from Asar Thompson. You need to see more from Jalen Duren. You also need to see more from Ron Holland. If those guys develop like we say they should, the Pistons should be fine. They won 44 games last year. Just get a little internal development, they can get 50. That's just being optimistic about it.
You know, that's such a great point that you make about the internal improvement, because you talk about Ron Holland, the year 1 to year 2 improvement. You never know. He could be a much bigger piece. But I feel like every time we had Richard on this whole Pistons season, he was talking about the importance of the veterans. So when the Pistons were kind of caught in a tough spot there for a moment, they probably said we need to replace not only a little bit of shooting, but that veteran presence in our locker room. And I feel like under the circumstances, Trajan Langdon kind of did the best that he could. Now, obviously, Karis LeVert has dealt with a lot of injuries. Duncan Robinson, kind of a traffic cone on defense. So neither of these are perfect prospects, but they don't necessarily need them to be. If Ron Holland and Asar Thompson can take a little bit of steps forward, be a little bit more dangerous on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, this team has showed us that they can make that work.
Yeah, and you got to remember Malik Beasley wasn't exactly stopping.
That's true. Yeah.
So you know what I mean? So you got a guy, Duncan can still knock down that three. You get him out there, and he still, what he does, spreads the floor for Cade.
Yep.
And that's what you really need. You just guys that put on the floor and Cade can go to work. And now you got Jaden Ivey coming back. We could be in a good spot. But the one thing that hurts us, though, is the teams around you got better. Miami just did a trade today where they got Norman Powell. Orlando went out and got those guys. Atlanta went out and got all those acquisitions that they made. So the key is that the teams around you got better, but you just hope that the Pistons' internal development can get them to that next level.
How do you replace 300-plus threes, though? By one player. It's an honest question, because Beasley's threes won him a lot of games last year.
I'm not going to take away from that, but the fact is, hopefully I'm hearing the Kings sign and trade may not work, but if you could have got a guy like Malik Monk, that would have been huge. It would have softened the blow of you losing Beasley.
Yeah.
But I think the guys is going to have to make some shots. But hopefully everybody stays healthy. Not Hardaway, but LeVert can come in, knock down some. Duncan can do what he's been doing all these years, and Trajan's not done. It's only July 7th.
Yep.
There's still a long off season. There could be a trade, and then hopefully the Pistons can get another guy that can come in and knock down some of those shots.
And I know it's a lot to ask of a 37th overall pick, but Chaz Lanier was not bad at Tennessee. I mean, he led them last year on a team that made it to the Elite Eight, shot extremely well from three. He could be a factor on this team as well. Not saying that he is the end-all, be-all for this team, but he still could be a contributor, and you really don't know what you got until you put somebody on the floor.
And you have to look at, just because someone's a second-round pick doesn't mean they can't come in and contribute right away. All we need you to do is just come in and knock down threes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that if he actually get playing time, and you see JB plays rookies, if he can come in and get some playing time and get some of those threes up and knock them down, show that he can knock them down at NBA level, we should be okay.
Yeah, you said it. You don't want to rely on a rookie for too much, but if there's one thing that can translate, it's shooting, right? A guy can. Even Isaiah Livers was kind of a contributor for the Pistons because he could shoot. And all they need Chaz Lanier to do is just go in and replace some of those 300
go stand
threes.
there, just go behind the arc and shoot it.
And I just Tim Hardaway hit a lot of big threes for this team
Yeah.
too. So it's not just the 300 from Beasley. You know, it's the 450 or whatever it was from both of those guys.
Schroeder, we didn't even bring up Schroeder.
Yeah.
How
That's
important would
huge.
he have been to keep on this team? Because we were talking all offseason. If you could pick 2 of the 3,
You already know
that you would be okay. And now we're at the point in time that the Pistons don't have any of those 3 between Beasley, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Dennis Schroeder.
Yeah, Schroeder would have been huge he was huge for us, you know what I'm saying, as that veteran leader on the floor. And again, like, he can tell guys where to go, and he can also score as well. So losing Schroeder is huge, you know. But like I said, getting Monk back would have softened that blow a little bit. So now you got to figure out, okay, hey, who the Pistons are going to play at that second guard spot, and you can kind of rotate in to have Ivy and Cade split the point guard duties. Hopefully Marcus Sasser can take a bigger leap this year, because he's a guy we've seen that he can make shots. I just feel like he really hasn't got an opportunity to say, hey, you're the backup point guard, show us what you got. So hopefully maybe, like, again, another internal piece that, you know, if they can get to the next level, it'd be great.
Schroeder also had that dog in him that kind
sure.
of fit the mentality.
Feisty.
And as someone who was, at Michigan during the Karras and Duncan eras, those are nice guys. So, hopefully the Pistons can keep that mentality that
They still got
built.
beef stew.
They still
Don't
got
worry
beef
about it,
stew.
baby.
Yeah, that
You gotta be
definitely
both
helps.
sides.
Yeah.
So, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, hey, we'll see what else Trajan does in the offseason, but I think so.
Do you think they need to add in the front court?
They need somebody.
Do you think they have enough at this point?
No.
Because we keep talking about threes and we keep talking about guard play.
No, because I think that was one of the biggest things I felt that in the New York series we lacked, a stretch 4 / a physical presence that you saw when you lost Isaiah. What happened? You had Paul Reed, which he was solid, but still it was a lot on Jalen Duren. There's a lot on Tobias Harris. And with some of these matchups, you need someone that can be bigger, but also they can stretch the floor. And I think it hasn't really been addressed yet. Still early. I know there's rumors about Nikola Vucevic from Chicago maybe coming in. He's a 7-footer. He won't stretch the floor, but he's still that big type guy that we need, you know what I'm saying, get some rebounds and that type of thing. So if something happens with him, that'd be great too. But I think they still have to address that stretch 4 and see what they can get as far as a backup point guard.
Summer League about to get going for this team. The first step, still a long ways to go until the season gets here. And also, trades can happen too, as we saw with this team.
Exactly. So.
Yeah. I think Trajan Langdon earned a little bit of trust with last season. They're probably ahead of schedule even from what he thought. Yeah. So, I'm willing to wait it out and see what his final product looks like.
And then one thing I will say, if they take a step back this year to make a bigger gain in the playoffs, hey, I'll take that. You know what I'm saying? The regular season is one thing, but if they're playoff tested and they can win games at home, Pistons win games at home during the playoffs, we'll be fine. So I just think if you take a step back in the regular season, but you still get in, as long as you get in now, we've learned that. Just get in, and we go from there.
Did you see him talk right to them? He said, win games at home.
That's it.
We just win one of
We
those
saw the
games.
side eye, Richard. Or was it even a side eye?
If we won one of those games at home, it'd be a completely different offseason. Yeah.
All right. Well, still a lot of work to do in this offseason. But, Richard, thank you for joining us. For Derek, I'm Hobie. We'll see y'all next time on DSP.